Now, I can hear the objections to the previous videos now. How dare you say that only believers in God can be good people? If God is needed to understand good and evil, and without Him we all turn into mouldy apples, then why is it that atheists do good things all the time? Atheists can be nice people. People who reject God don't instantly turn into immoral axe murderers. And what about people of other religions who believe in a different God? You get nice people all around the world regardless of their religion. And anyway, religion itself has been the cause of most of the misery in the world. So this theory is just rubbish. That's the kind of things that many people would say in response to the previous videos. So let's explore these objections. If this theory is correct, then why is it that godless people don't instantly turn into immoral axe murderers? Why is it that people who don't believe in God can often still be extremely nice people who do good things? There are 4 reasons, 4 restraints on our sinful nature, if you like, and these can be summarized with 4 C's: the conscience, creation, civil laws, and the Great Commission. Let's take a look at each of them one by one. The Bible tells us that God has written His moral law into the hearts of every human being. We looked at this in the previous videos, and that it speaks to everyone through their consciences. Paul writes in Romans that even when Gentiles who do not have God's written law instinctively follow what the law says, they show that in their hearts they know right from wrong. They demonstrate that God's law is written within them, for their own consciences either accuse them or tell them they are doing what's right. Every single human being in the world has been given a conscience which gives them an instinctive sense of right and wrong. Everyone in the entire world has a conscience. In fact, in times gone by, the moral law was referred to as the natural law because it was considered so natural that we should all know about it through our consciences. The word conscience also literally means with knowledge, con with, science knowledge. It means that we all have an inner knowledge of good and evil that comes through that little voice inside our spirits. The voice affirms when we're doing something right, and it accuses us when we're about to do something wrong. It should be noted that there is no naturalistic or atheistic explanation for the existence of the conscience. That voice that you're hearing, the one that seems to be separate and contradictory to your own desires, is simply the voice of God within your own spirit. And this is reason number 1 why people who have rejected God don't instantly turn into axe murderers. Their own conscience restrains them. The second reason people don't immediately become fantastically immoral without God is because He has revealed the truth about life through His creation. For the truth about God is known to them instinctively. God has put this knowledge in their hearts. From the time the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky and all that God made. They can clearly see His invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature, so they have no excuse whatsoever for not knowing God. It doesn't take a PhD in science to look around and see the diversity, beauty, complexity and magnitude of the world and conclude that there must be an amazing mind behind it all. Even the most ardent atheists have been willing to admit that the world shows signs of amazingly intelligent design.
If you look at the details of biochemistry, molecular biology, you might find a signature of some sort of designer.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe.
Abraham Lincoln once said, "I can see how it might be possible for a man to look down upon the earth and be an atheist, but I cannot conceive how we could look up into the heavens and say there is no God." Lincoln was right, and creation does more than merely tell us that God exists. It tells us something about His character too. Just as you can get insight into a painter like Claude Monet by looking at one of his paintings, you can get insight into God by looking at what He's made. The design tells us about the designer. Nature reflects who God is, and there's a sense in which His design for the universe then coerces us into moral living. For example, if we want to have babies, creation says that that can only happen in one way, between one man and one woman. If we try to go against creation and procreate within same-sex partnerships, we are wasting our time. It just can't happen. This is one example of how we are coerced by the design of God's creation, which reflects His character, to have natural sexual relations. And indeed, whenever we act against the natural order of creation, we tend to find that there is a significant price to pay. Nature itself tries to keep us in check.
For example, if we engage in drunkenness, we will experience rotten, painful hangovers. If we persist further, we may even get liver disease. If we consistently submit to greed and eat too much, we will become obese and develop subsequent health problems. If we sleep around, we will soon encounter emotional pain, guilt, feelings of worthlessness, as well as sexually transmitted infections. If we take drugs, we'll experience damage to our health and possibly death.
Creation itself informs us of the moral law and coerces us into good living. And so for the sake of health and happiness, we generally try to cooperate with it to the best of our ability. And this is reason number 2 why we don't instantly fall into sin when we abandon God.
The third reason we don't instantly become fantastically immoral without God is that the police force would throw us into jail if we did. Human beings are smart enough to know that society needs a moral code to function, so generally speaking, God's moral law is upheld through the civil law of the land. For example, the moral law says that murder is wrong, so in most countries, the civil law says that murder is illegal. If you murder someone, the police force will come after you and the judiciary system will make you pay. The same thing happens for perjury and theft and other sins. Obviously, that acts as a deterrent to do what you want living. This is why Paul writes, "Everyone must submit to governing authorities, for all authority comes from God." God's voice is heard through the civil laws of the land, which are upheld and enforced by the human authorities. In that sense, the government and civil authorities of a nation actually do God's bidding.
This has historically been especially true in nations that were founded upon the English common law system, countries like the United Kingdom, United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, etc. These are countries that have legal systems that are directly rooted in the Bible. And again, this is reason number 3 why we don't all immediately become hugely immoral without God. The fourth reason why people around the world may have a vague adherence to the moral law, regardless of their rejection of God, is because of Jesus' last command to Christians before he ascended to heaven.
"Go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you, and be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." This is known as the Great Commission, and it means that for 2,000 years, Christians have diligently been traveling into every corner of the world, spreading Christian values and passing on the teachings of Jesus. Consequently, Christian morality has had an impact on everyone and has civilized and influenced the entire world in more ways than it realizes or would even want to acknowledge. I think it's worth going into some detail on this, so let's take a little detour to examine just how transformative Christianity has been on planet Earth.